Hey guys, welcome back to the third video in the Baby Yoda series. We're going to be jumping in starting right with the eyes. As you can see here, I am applying I'm actually using black this time, mixed in with a little bit of liquid original. And I am reestablishing the pupils that got lost in the last video. Like I said before, there comes a point where you have to stop painting just because you're starting to get a muddy mess, and that's what was happening to me. So I stopped, and now I'm continuing on with my glazing, and for right now I'm just using black to reestablish those pupils. And then I'm going to go into the yellow ochre, and I'm going to start putting in the little golden flecks that I see in his eyes. And I'm just using a flat number 2, and I'm dabbing it on there. I'm not doing like any type of stroke. I'm just actually dabbing on the paint because it's very broken up when you look at the inside of his eyes. It's not like one continuous picture that I'm looking at here. So I want to just dab that in so it's very inconsistent with the shapes. And that way it makes it look more organic. And I'm going in now with some ultramarine blue and some black. And also I'm using a little bit of the burnt umber. And it's giving me a very nice dark. Now keep in mind that with all these colors, I am mixing in some liquid original just so it'll help smooth it onto the canvas, and it will help with the drying time. And I'm moving on to the other eye now, doing the same exact thing. I like to go back and forth between the eyes and using the same colors when possible. That way it's very uniform. And this will give the eyes that recessed look and also the roundness that I'm looking for with his eye shape. And now I've noticed that I haven't really got the separation that I wanted in those gold flecks in his eyes. So I'm just taking that same brush and just putting in little marks in between just to kind of break that up. All right, now I'm putting in some white to get that very nice bright highlight that's in his eye. And this is just straight white. There's nothing else mixed in with it. And now I've added in a little bit of ultramarine blue into the white to get that highlight that is going across his eyes. And it looks almost white, but it's actually, kind of like a very light, like a powdery blue color. So I'm just reestablishing the shapes that I see in the reference photo that they did get lost in the last video. So I just want to make sure that I capture all that. Paying attention to these little details will really make sure that it has a very realistic look. I'm just blending that out with a dome blender in an upward motion toward the center of the eye. Now the brightest part of this highlight is down at the bottom part, so I am putting a little bit of white there, but that white is mixing in with that blue that I just put down. So it's not bright white. As you can see the difference between that bright white highlight and the white that I just put in there. Now I am taking some liquid original and glazing it around the eyes. It just makes it easier when I'm putting in a glaze. For the eyes, I actually didn't want to do that because I wanted to have a little bit more control. But now that I'm moving on to the skin and around the eye, I can just go ahead and put that on there and just use straight paint. So I went into my purple now, and I am using, what color purple was that? It was the dioxine purple from the Winsor & Newton. And I'm adding in a little bit of white now to get a little bit more of a highlight. It started to kind of look like he had on some eyeshadow or something, so I needed to dial that down a little bit. So I'm just adding in a little bit more white now, and I will start to blend that out and give it more of a realistic look. And I am just working on the highlights at the moment. I will start to put in some darks in just a minute. Now I'm putting in some alizarin and crimson to give that more pinkish look that he has around his eyes. And you know, right now it is kind excuse me, it's kind of looking not very realistic, but I will tame that down in just a little bit. Now I'm going in with that same dark color that I used inside the eyes, and I am slowly adding that to kind of give more of the wrinkles and give some more depth around the eyes. And I'm just going back and forth with using the darks and the lights here to kind of establish some of those wrinkles. And one way to really accomplish wrinkles in the face is to make sure that you have a very nice dark coming right up to your highlight. And that will give that nice depth that you're looking for with a wrinkle. Now moving underneath the eye and getting that fold there underneath the waterline in his eye. And just starting to work on some wrinkles around his nose. I like to make a straight line and then I blend it outward, and it's not so harsh if you do that. And I'm taking that same dark color, but I'm using it as a glaze now to just add in some of the shadows, just to try to get some more dimension here. And I'm going to work my way around the face, just doing the same process. Now I'm starting to glaze on some green, and for this I am using Viridian by Winsor & Newton. It's actually Viridian Hue if you want me to be more specific. And I am just glazing that in, just trying to give a little bit more depth. And it is mixing in with the darker colors that I used previously. And I feel like it's giving me it's starting to die down the brightness that comes with using Viridian. I'm kind of starting to wonder if I should have used sap green and maybe mixed it in and kind of toned it down a little bit. But I'm pretty happy with the way this is turning out. But I kind of wonder what it would have looked like if I would have used sap green instead. But I am liking the way that the darkness is getting achieved underneath the chin. I feel like it's a really nice shadow. So I am happy with that. So same thing here with the wrinkles, just like I did with the eyelids there. I'm going to put in some darks and just filling those in. And then I'll go in with some highlight in just a few minutes and put those right up against those darks. And it gives a very nice deep wrinkle. You know, Yoda, his wrinkles are very deep in his skin, and I want to make sure that I capture that. Reshaping his mouth now. And I feel like getting his mouth shape is very important. So make sure you pay attention to that. Here I'm coming in with those highlights, and you see I'm bringing it right up to where those darks are. And for this, I'm using a gray. So I took the dark color that I was using around the eyes, which was the black, ultramarine blue, and burnt umber, and added in some white to get a very nice gray look. And that's what I'm going to be using for the highlights on the inside, on the center, and then the left side of his face where the sun is not hitting. I'm extending out those wrinkles there on his head. I just felt like they didn't come down far enough. So I'm going ahead and extending that out with those same colors and just really trying to get those wrinkles established. It's such a signature look for him. I really want to make sure that I get those wrinkles in there. And as you've seen just then, sometimes if you make a mistake, just grab a Q-tip and just very easily wipe off what you just did, because the layers underneath are already dry. You're not going to do any damage. So just do it very gently, but that's one great thing about oils is that it's very forgiving. Now I'm reestablishing the nostrils and then there's the shape of the nose by using that same dark color that I've been using. But I am putting in quite a bit of liquid original, so it is a glaze. Starting to darken up here underneath the chin area where his chin meets his coat that he has on. So I can give some very nice depth in that area. And I'm going to take that same color and I'm going to start glazing it just a little bit in this upper area here to start establishing those shadows in his clothing. And one thing that I like to do when I'm painting, I really try to limit the amount of colors that I use, just because I want everybody to be able to use the colors. And I feel like if you're using 15 different colors, that's not feasible for everybody. So I do try to limit my palette and then just mix the colors as I need to. So that is one reason why you'll notice that I use a very limited palette. Now I'm just establishing some of those shadows here, just trying to get more depth into his skin tone. Because that's one thing that you're going to have to really do. If you're trying to achieve something that's realistic, you need to make sure that your darks are dark enough and that your lights are light enough. If you don't do that, then it's just going to look very flat. Now I'm moving on to the ear here. I'm just really working on getting those darks. And like I said, you know, this is just a glaze of that same color that I used in his eyes. And he does have this very nice yellow color, so I did a mixture of the yellow ochre and white. And I'm just putting that over the green that was already there, but it is a glaze. Now I'm moving on to the other ear and just putting in those highlights. Now I am using the yellow ochre and white to get these highlights. And I'm just slowly brushing those on. Be very careful when you're using any colors that have white mixed in, because white's very opaque and it will wash out and it will give a very chalky appearance if you're not careful. So just put a little bit on there and blend it out as opposed to trying to put it on there really thick. Because you don't want it to look chalky. If you do that, it's just going to look awful and then you have to go back over it again. Now I haven't cleaned my brush and I haven't applied any new paint to it. And as I work my way inward, it will mix with those other colors that I already have put down. So it gives a very nice gradient as I work inward to the face. Just putting in some highlights here. I'm just using white there in the ear. Now I'm moving on to his coat, and I'm using the same color that I used on the side of his face there, which was the mix of the yellow ochre and the white. And please remember that I am constantly mixing in just a little bit of the liquid original if it's a color that I haven't already used, just so I can make sure that it dries, because a lot of the paints, if you don't put something in there to help them dry faster, then it could take weeks, if not months, for it to dry enough for you to be able to continue painting on it. And if you use the liquid original, you can start painting again in like 24 to 48 hours. Now I'm taking the liquid original and I am putting a glaze over the entire jacket that he's wearing. And I'm going to start glazing in the shadows first. For me, I really like to put in the darks first and then I put in the lights. It's just a personal preference of mine. And I'm using the same color that I use in the eyes again to establish these darks. Now I am almost doing like a dry brush technique because I'm not adding any of the Liquid Original to the paint. I put that glaze on there and that's all I'm doing when it comes to Liquid Original now. I'm not putting any more on there. And then when I do that, it's going to give a very nice texture because I'm going to have a lot of the underpainting showing through. And that's exactly what I want because his jacket has a lot of fibers and a lot of texture to it. So I want to keep that. And using the burnt umber as the underpainting was perfect for this painting because it matches perfectly and I'm not going to have to do a lot to establish the look of what I want to achieve. Just make sure that you're getting those darks in there. As you see, I'm putting in very, very dark, and I just do that by putting a little bit more paint on the brush to get those really darks to come through. And then when I move on to like this area, it's not as dark, so I haven't put any more paint on there from where I just put it previously up there underneath his neck. And as you see, I'm starting to establish some of the folds. And I will just work my way around his jacket and putting in those darks. And I hope that you can see how it's starting to form the wrinkles, and you can really start to see the texture forming. Now I'm taking some of the dark on a bigger brush, the one that I just used to put a glaze of the Liquid Original on, and I am just brushing that all over the jacket part. I'm just trying to dye down the color a little bit. I don't feel like I have to go into as much detail as I do at the top and the sleeves because there's really just not that much there. So I'm just glazing on that color just to try to get some, different tonal values. And now I'm going to take that same brush without adding any more of the paint to it, and I'm going to just dab it all over. And as you can see, it's establishing a nice texture to the jacket, and I'm really not having to do that much. I'm just dabbing it all over, letting it happen organically, and that way it seems more natural. And I'll do this over the entire jacket. Now I'm going in with my smaller brush and just putting in those shadows that I hadn't done in the original part. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.